Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Liz Ndoye, and I am just thrilled to be with you to teach yet another Art at Home class sponsored and hosted by the Hoboken Public Library. We're so lucky to be able to spend this time together and look at other artists' work, appreciate what they do, and be inspired by them. Since we're in the month of July, we're going to continue working with and talking about artists in collaboration. For our first lesson, we talked about Andy Warhol and Jean-Michel Basquiat and their infamous connection. Tonight, we are going to look at and visit the works of Robert Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns. Some art critics say that the love affair between Robert Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns was the greatest love affair in the history of art. In the 1950s, they shared a building together. Rauschenberg's studio was on the top floor, Jasper Johns' studio was below. It was on Pearl Street in New York. For 6 years, they worked together to create some of the most exciting art of the 20th century. The period of art history that they were coming up in New York City was when abstract expressionism ruled. Most of the famous artists of that time were doing that kind of abstract work. De Kooning, Jackson Pollock, many other people that we could name. Rothko, Frankenthaler, the list is endless. But Rauschenberg and Johns were starting something so new and so fresh and so exciting. They've often been called neo-Dadaists because they valued the everyday. Johns in particular never saw a division between what we think of as art objects and what we use as everyday functional objects. Rauschenberg was similar. He frequently used found objects and found materials in the art that he created and called combines. They were combination paintings and sculptures in which he attached three-dimensional objects, silkscreen prints, anything he could find onto the canvas. Whereas Johns became famous for his target paintings and his American flag paintings. Ironically, in really kind of the middle of their relationship, Robert Rauschenberg was visited by Leo Castelli. And Leo Castelli was a very prominent art dealer and gallerist who was representing Rauschenberg and making him quite famous. When Castelli came to Rauschenberg's studio, he said, "Wow, I've heard about this young kid who's sharing the building with you, Jasper Johns. I'd really like to see his work. Can you bring me down to see his work?" So Rauschenberg ran down and said, "Jasper, Castelli is here. He wants to see your work." Jasper Johns, who is quite famous for the fact that he's shy and retiring, said, "Not today. I'm not ready to show my work. It's not finished. It's not perfect. I really don't want anyone to come and look at my work yet." Well, Castelli just barged in the door behind Rauschenberg at that point, and he immediately said to Johns, "We are going to mount a solo show for you at Castelli Gallery." And sadly for Rauschenberg, that was kind of then a period when he became less popular in the art world, and Jasper Johns rocketed to the top and became famous instantly. Everything that Johns created, it was almost as if, as one critic put it, there was angel dust in Johns' work because it was just incredibly exciting and new and innovative. Rauschenberg later in life became equally famous and probably became one of the best loved artists in the world at that time. So the fact that Johns was in ascendance when Rauschenberg was temporarily descending in the art world turned out to be okay in the end. But unfortunately, it really was the end of their relationship, and by the mid-60s, their friendship dissolved completely. This is a photo of Johns and Rauschenberg at the height of their friendship. You can see they're quite happy to be together. This is Rauschenberg on the left, the elder of the two, and much taller. Rauschenberg was very outgoing and a buoyant personality. And this is Johns on the right. As I said earlier, he was quite shy and diffident, not outgoing at all. He did not like sharing his work with others until he was absolutely positive that things were quote-unquote perfect. But their years of collaboration enabled both of them to do such extraordinary works of art, brand new, groundbreaking, never tried before works of art. They were kind of the children of Marcel Duchamp and the Dadaist movement in Europe, but they took the ideas of Dadaism using found objects and everyday materials, and they turned them on their head. Those ideas became completely Americanized and brand new with the creative hands of Rauschenberg and Johns. And in some ways they gave each other permission to take these risks and do experimentation. And that's why their work is art, and amazing art to boot. The image on the left is a painting assemblage by Jasper Johns. He, as Rauschenberg, also would take objects and attach them to the canvas. This was so unheard of and never ever done before. They didn't let go entirely of abstract expressionism, because you can see that Johns' painting technique is very, very thick and kind of what we would call messy and haptic and full of feeling and expression. A lot of motion in his work and thick, layered texture. But again, he's celebrating this everyday object, a broom, and helping us, the viewers, appreciate it as a beautiful object. Is it art? Is it just a utilitarian tool? Jasper thinks it's art, and he showcases it in this way to help us realize that there is no line between the everyday and fine art. Here you see one of Rauschenberg's combines. He named them combines because they're not really paintings, they're not really prints, they're not really sculpture. They're a combination of all those things. You can see that Rauschenberg, in this corner of his combine, he used a silk screen. Silk screens up until this moment in the world of art were only used for commercial art. It was unheard of for a fine artist to use the silk screen technique in what they produced. A lot of also very sloppy abstract painting. He frequently painted over the objects, photographs, and other images that he collaged onto the canvas, and it made for a very, very vibrant and exciting tableau. And Rauschenberg's combines are enormous. If you get a chance to go to the Museum of Modern Art, there are quite a few Rauschenbergs there. You will be amazed at the size of his creations. Now, Rauschenberg never claimed to be a political artist, but he frequently used imagery that brought the everyday political activity and upheaval of the period of time in which he was working. Obviously, this painting was probably done in the mid-60s, and it does speak a lot to the American culture and what was going on in the United States at that time. Here we have another Rauschenberg combine. You can see more of the kinds of three-dimensional things that he attached to the canvas. These are just chunks of wood that he probably found laying in the street. You can see he used a lot of paint. He collaged a lot of different types of paper, and he made this really exciting, abstract yet combination sculpture painting. Rauschenberg's approach was sometimes called neo-Dadaist, a label he shared with Jasper Johns. And Rauschenberg was quoted as saying that he wanted to work in the gap between art and life, suggesting he questioned the distinction between art objects and everyday objects, which is reminiscent, as I mentioned before, of the issues raised by the Dada pioneer Marcel Duchamp. And at the same time, Johns's paintings of numerals, flags, and the like were also replaying Duchamp's message of the role of the observer creating meaning in art. Okay, now we're looking at Jasper Johns' work, probably one of his most famous images of the American flag. He did many, many American flags in a series. He was fascinated with the image and did it in a variety of ways, including painting it in green and orange and all kinds of different colors. So it was an inspiration for him. He loved the design of the flag, and he kept going back to revisit it. Now, it's difficult to see probably in the image you're looking at now. It looks like a painting, but in fact, Johns's work was a combination of encaustic, melted wax, and ripped up newsprint. He would put many, many layers of newsprint, cover it with the wax, let it dry and harden, and then paint it. So they're extraordinarily textured. Also at MoMA, there's quite a large collection of Jasper Johns pieces, and when the museums in Manhattan open up, when the pandemic is over, you must go to see Johns's work. This is another Johns work, and another image that he did repeatedly is that of the target. Again, he just loved the design of this common object, and he did it in a variety of colors, sizes, and textures. Again, he used the encaustic wax with the shredded newsprint underneath. You can really get a feel for how textured and layered his images were. And although it may first appear to have little in common with Rauschenberg's work, the flag and the target share that same focus on cultural fragments. They both were putting reality back into art and thrusting the relationship between the viewer and the artwork into limelight. The connection between the viewer and the work of art was essential for the art to come to life. And the individualism and the artist starving in the Garrett visionary idea of the abstract expressionist, which was so dominant at the time, was not what Johns and Rauschenberg wanted to achieve. They felt it was too self-involved and too dependent on the artist's own psyche. They wanted to draw the viewer in. They wanted art to be for everyone. And nothing could compare to their first early years of creation, when the two artists broke down these lines separating mass culture and fine art. They paved the way for pop art and changing Western art history forever. John's artworks especially were just so vibrant and alive, each painting reveling in self-confidence and disarming simplicity. Now that we've looked at the work of Jasper Johns and Robert Rauschenberg, and we know a little bit about their aesthetic and their style and how they worked, I thought it would be perfect for us to create our own combines. We are sheltering at home. We are in a time of protest and pandemic. We're in a period of history when we're constantly bombarded by commercial imagery. TV screens are on all the time. We're focused on our screens, on our phones, on our laptops, on our iPads. All of that is fuel for the project that we can use tonight. We want to make this everyday world become our art. We want to be inspired by all the visuals that we are seeing constantly at this really time of upheaval and unrest and uncertainty in the United States. And because of that, I was inspired to have us do a combine project on paper, and I'm inviting you to think of a word that sums up something that you're feeling at this period in history. The other day, I was listening to an interview on National Public Radio of people of all different races. And the interviewer asked each of the people in this group, in this discussion, what was the one thing that they each wanted more than anything in their lives at this chaotic time. Every single participant, no matter their class, their race, their skin color, their religion, and it was a very diverse group, their ethnicity. Every single participant in the discussion said, we just want peace. We want peace for ourselves, for our families, for our friends. So peace has been a word on my mind quite a lot since I heard that interview. And of course it has many meanings, so it can be interpreted in different ways. I chose the word peace. You might want to think of another word. Perhaps the word hope comes to mind for you. Or it may not be a word of happiness and joy. It may be the reverse for you. But try and think of a word that is powerful for you, that encapsulates a little bit of what you're feeling as we go through this period of change. Next, I'm going to show you the materials that we're going to use in this project, and then I will demonstrate for you how to create our combine about this period in history. I want to hold up for you some of the objects that I'm going to use, some of the media that I'm going to use. Some of it you're going to find surprising, but remember how much Rauschenberg and Johns wanted people to appreciate the beauty of the everyday. And then you might understand why I picked these media for us, or for me to use, and for me to inspire you to use. We're in a period of time when food is playing an important role. For some of us, it's scarcity of food and being worried about where the next food is going to come from. For some of us, we're using food as a way to comfort ourselves and to feel better about the fact that we are in a very interesting period of history. So what I did, I went through my pantry and started looking for everyday things that, quite frankly, I don't usually notice. They're buried in the back of my shelves. They are things that I quite honestly wouldn't buy to eat every day, but during a situation like COVID-19 and sheltering at home, these are things that I buy. They're kind of like my rainy day fund of food items. So I chose these objects because I love the packaging. They're in different kinds of containers, but each container is wrapped with a paper wrapper that really speaks a lot to the culture of our times. The logos that companies use to advertise their products are very powerful, and that's why I picked these objects to use. You will need a glue stick, and you can get these in any supermarket or CVS. You'll need scissors, and I started the project with just plain white paper and a Sharpie. I outlined my letters. I made them quite large because I knew that I was going to be filling in the spaces with collage. So the Sharpie is for creating the word that you want to do in your combine. And the final media that I've chosen to use is watercolor paint. You can use food coloring if you have it. You could use tempera or poster paint or acrylic paint, whatever you have in your home. You could even use ketchup. Think every day. Those were the things that were the inspiration for Johns and Rauschenberg. All right, so we're going to now begin making this project. Obviously I started off camera so you could get a sense of what the finished product might be like. And now I'm going to start the demonstration. I'm also using newspaper. If you recall, both Johns and Rauschenberg loved using print material. And I want you to think about the printed material in two ways. You can look at the words and find words that carry a message, but you can also think of the print as not words, but shapes. One thing I like to do when I'm doing this kind of mixed media work is to have a whole pile of stuff cut up and ready to go to use. And one of your goals when creating this Neo-Dadaist combine is to think about texture. Both Rauschenberg and Johns created layers and layers of texture. Neither of them were careful in the execution of their work, even though they were trying to break away from what they saw as the confines of abstract expressionism. They were still kind of married to that very rapid, messy brushstroke that the abstract expressionists used. I find that the New York Times a particularly great source of imagery, but of course any newspaper or magazine will do. I'm looking for pictures because either their texture or their color, they appeal to me. And then I particularly love this page. It's job listings. I love the tiny print in long columns, so I'm going to cut some of that up. I don't remember the New York Times ever having a classified page this big before. It's wonderful that they're doing this. All right, I think I have just about enough to start with, but there's a world map over here that I've just fallen in love with. I gotta get it. This is about the international stock market. You can also rip the paper. You don't have to use scissors. It's all good. All right. So the next thing, so here I'm using an actual word to convey a message. It's the word jobs. But you can also see that I'm using print material that you can't even read, and that's fine. It creates a wonderful texture. And remember, I'm also using material that I'm tearing off of things that I found in my kitchen. Because I want to use some of those commercial images to get a sense of the culture of the times. And that's a lot of what Rauschenberg and Johns were doing. They never considered themselves to be political artists, but a great deal of their work carried, and of course Johns is still alive, Rauschenberg's dead, but their work carries a political message even if they didn't intend it to. My goal is to fill in most of the letters of the word peace with print material. Again, trying to keep it textured and interesting. And when I feel I've put enough collage work, I'm going to do some painting to complete my combine. So is it a painting? Is it a collage? Who knows? And does it matter? Not really. That's what artists like Rauschenberg and Johns freed us to do, to experiment and enjoy ourselves. So I'm gluing as I go, which actually is exactly what I told you not to do, but this is in the interest of time. Unfortunately, we don't have hours together, and I want you to get a sense of what your finished combine might look like. You, on the other hand, can play around with everything you cut out and make more careful decisions. And I recommend that you do that. Take your time, play, enjoy yourself. Art does not have to be serious and deep all the time. I think we're conditioned to believe that art is for a kind of a elite group of highly skilled people. You can learn the skills. You just have to trust in your own perceptions and your own decision-making process. Some of you may want to use more of the commercial labels if you're in a very colorful mood, or you might want to use magazine instead of newspaper print because you will get way more intense. So, magazine colors are a lot more vibrant and glossy. If you want a glossier look to the surface of your combine, magazines are the way, and catalogs too are the way you want to go. Catalogs are great because you get a lot more of those everyday mundane images. So I'm going to pretend that I've collaged enough print material on my picture, and now, as Johns and Rauschenberg both did, I'm going to start using paint. I'm thinking of the paint as a tool for three different things: to add color, to add texture, and also to pull the whole work together, to fill in empty spaces and to create a more interesting composition. So here we go. It's okay if I cover up the things that I've collaged onto the paper. It's okay if I mix new colors. It's fine even if the word piece gets obscured and eliminated. As long as the whole image now works compositionally. Rauschenberg used. So here we go, adding more color. Keep it sloppy, keep it fast. I like to contrast the grays and blacks of the newsprint with very bright color, similar to what Rauschenberg and Johns did. Got to get a little more paint. These are watercolor paints in tubes. If you look back to older lessons, I explained the different types of paints that are available. But I love the idea. I might, when I work further on this project on my own, I might start using ketchup or, I don't know, pasta sauce. Why not? Celebrate the everyday. And a particularly wonderful idea when we are, for the most part, forced to stay at home and learn to appreciate what we're surrounded by. I bet Jasper Johns would have loved being sequestered at home. Actually, he probably is right now. What am I saying? All right, I'm not going to do too much more. As always, my goal is to get you up and running and focused on doing your own art at home. Okay, so now you're going to focus on me for the final. Will I like it? So keep your brushstroke fast and furious. Once you've completed the collage and you start on the painting part, you can be way more relaxed with what you're doing. I have a lot more I want to do on this piece, but I'm going to hold it up to show you how my combine is evolving and changing as I go. And that's all part of the artistic process. I've mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. The process is way more important than the finished product. Enjoy what you learn as you go. It will help your next piece of art be even better than the last. Okay, so I'll recap this project. First, you're going to think of a word that comes to mind about staying safe at home and also the political unrest and chaos that we're living through at the moment in our country. You're going to think of a word that evokes some feeling you may have about that. You're going to draw the letters large and bubble shaped. Then you're going to collage printed images that you find around your home into the letters, and then you're going to use paint to complete the project. Paint around the letters, paint in the letters, paint over the letters, whatever it takes to create a finished composition. You can also go back over the painted areas and glue more things too. And if you want to glue three-dimensional things, if you have liquid Elmer's glue, you could glue, I don't know, shells, pebbles, beads, anything three-dimensional to your combine. You'll be true to what Rauschenberg and Johns were trying to achieve. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I invite you to see more of our Art at Home projects at the Hoboken Public Library.org website. You can either look for me, Liz Ndoye, or Art at Home lessons. Enjoy yourselves, art on, as I always say, and do some further research on Jasper Johns and Robert Rauschenberg, one of the greatest collaborations in the history of modern art. Thank you for joining me.